11 years ago, Emily Hartwell vanished without a trace. Her red kayak was found drifting near Sunrise Cove, her wedding ring still on her finger when she kissed her husband goodbye. Everyone thought she was gone forever, until that same ring turned up buried deep in the heart of a tree, miles from the shore. Now the question isn't where she went. It's who put it there, and why. Sunrise cut through the morning fog like a scalpel. A watery sliver of light stretched across Lake Pendorile, touching the shoreline with surgical precision. Nathan Hartwell sat at his kitchen table, motionless, watching the lake he no longer swam in. His black coffee sat untouched, steam curling into nothing. In 11 years, nothing had changed. That was the point. The phone rang, not the warbled ringtone of a text, or the high-pitched chime of spam calls. This was the landline, the one that rarely made a sound unless it was a doctor's office or the sheriff's department. The display blinked. Kootenai County Sheriff. Nathan didn't breathe. His hand hovered over the receiver, then lowered. Coffee sloshed as he stood too fast. He didn't answer the call. Instead, he let the machine pick up. A pause, then a voice. "Mr. Hartwell, this is Detective Martinez with the Sheriff's Department. We have new information regarding your wife's case. Please call us back as soon as possible." A quiet click. Silence. Nathan's mug slipped from his fingers and exploded across the counter. Dark liquid streamed like blood across the granite. He didn't remember the drive, just the sting of cold air as he walked through the doors of the Sheriff's Department, a place that had once known him by name. He'd sat in its chairs, studied its pinboards, pleaded with its deputies. 11 years later, he was just a civilian again. Detective Sophia Martinez met him in the lobby. She looked younger than he expected, late 30s, maybe. Sharp eyes that didn't flinch from grief, the kind of eyes that carried other people's losses like scars. She offered a handshake, and when he didn't take it, she gave a nod of understanding and turned on her heel. "This way, Mr. Hartwell." The evidence room smelled like paper and mildew. Somewhere a radio played softly, country music, off-key and distant. On the table sat a plastic bag. Inside, a gold wedding band nestled in white tissue. No tag, no label, just the ring. Nathan stared. He didn't need the inscription, didn't need the date, didn't need the dull curve of its worn band or the faint scratch where she'd caught it on the pantry drawer once. "That's hers." His voice came out cracked, foreign. Martinez waited, letting him speak. "She wore it the day she disappeared. I saw her fidgeting with it while we made breakfast. I watched her spin it around her finger." Martinez opened a folder. "Yesterday morning, a hiker, Marcus Webb, found this in a tree near Sunrise Cove. He was photographing a red-tailed hawk when he noticed a cavity in the base of a large oak. Inside was this." Nathan shook his head slowly. "That's inland, miles from the water." "Yes." She flipped the folder toward him. Photos, close-ups of the oak, bark spiraling around a hollow, cross-sections, the ring, partially embedded in the trunk like it had grown there. "Our forensic botanist dated the cavity to about 10 to 11 years ago," she said. "Whoever placed the ring inside did so deliberately. The bark grew around it over time. Whoever did it understood tree growth. It was calculated." He sat back, as if the air itself had turned heavier. "You're saying someone hid it there? Not dropped it, not lost it. They wanted it sealed, hidden, preserved. Why?" Martinez hesitated. "Sometimes people bury secrets. Sometimes they mark them. This could have been ritual. It could have been guilt." Nathan looked up sharply. "Are you saying this changes the official story?" "I'm saying this changes everything." She closed the folder with a snap. "We're reopening your wife's case." 3 days later, Nathan returned to the department. This time he brought questions. Martinez met him in a small conference room where a woman with silver-streaked hair waited beside a stack of photos and a growth chart. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the county's consulting forensic botanist, introduced herself briskly and launched into the science. The tree was approximately 30 years old at the time of insertion. Based on cambium ring growth, we believe the cavity was carved with precision, a small incision about 2 inches deep. The ring was placed directly into the inner hollow. Nathan squinted at the image. The gold band was almost fused into the wood grain. It looked like a fossil. Elena's analysis confirms that the cavity would have sealed itself within 18 to 24 months, Martinez added. No one would have found it by accident. But someone did. Only because of the hawk. Pure chance. Dr. Vasquez tapped a photo of bark scratches. Here's where it gets stranger. We found evidence of repeated visits. These marks are consistent with tool scraping, different ages, some new as of last month. Nathan's stomach turned. So someone's been going back. Visiting. Ritualistically, Vasquez confirmed. Same knife, same depth, almost ceremonial. Like tending a grave, Martinez said softly. Nathan swallowed. But Emily's not buried there. Are you sure? Martinez asked. That silenced him. Back in his car, Nathan sat with the door open, staring at the ring in the photo. The last time he saw it, it was on her hand. The hand that waved from the red kayak, the one that blew him a kiss across the lake. See you tonight for dinner. She'd said it like she meant it. Because she had. Or so he thought. Now someone was planting pieces of her like offerings, leaving evidence where it couldn't be found. Until now. Was it grief? Was it guilt? Or was it the beginning of something no one was ready to see? Nathan turned the ignition, the engine growling to life like something awakening after too long a sleep. It was time to ask the question that had haunted him for over a decade. Not where Emily had gone, but who wanted her to disappear, and why they were still holding on to her story like it belonged to them. The cold case archive hadn't changed in a decade. It still smelled like dust, cardboard, and forgotten promises. Detective Martinez led Nathan through the back hallway of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, past faded wanted posters and a vending machine humming with mechanical indifference. At the end of the hall was Room C. Emily's case file had lived here since 2014, boxed, logged, untouched, except for the annual procedural audit. Martinez set the box on the table. Most of this is yours if you want it later, but for now we go through it like it's day one. Nathan nodded. His stomach churned, not from nerves that had burned out years ago, but from the sick recognition of how easily a decade could vanish into manila folders. She pulled the lid off. Initial interviews, lake search records, sonar logs, missing persons flyers, environmental reports. She handed him a weathered piece of paper. Here's Jeremy Blackwood's original statement. Nathan froze. Jeremy. He remembered the guy well enough. Friendly, granola-crunching environmentalist type. Worked with Emily at the Inland Northwest Environmental Council. Showed up with sandwiches and platitudes during the early search days. Always had a reason to be there. Too helpful. He skimmed the statement. Emily said she planned to hike the Sunset Point Trail on Sunday. Said she needed the solitude. Martinez slid another sheet over. That's the ranger log. No vehicle was seen parked at the Sunset Point trailhead that day. Nothing registered there until Monday. Emily didn't tell me she was going hiking at all, Nathan muttered. She told me she was kayaking. She packed her dry bag. I watched her. Jeremy's statement says hiking. Yours says kayaking. Nathan's throat felt dry. You think he was covering for something? I think at minimum he was misinformed. At worst. She let the implication hang. You said she left from your dock? Yes, the red kayak. I watched her push off. That's where the search began. But Jeremy directed half the volunteers west, toward Sunset Point. Martinez circled something in her notepad. That's the opposite side of the lake. Nathan nodded. You're thinking what I'm thinking. He sent searchers away from where she actually was. A pause. Was that incompetence? Martinez said. Or intention? Nathan didn't reply. 2 hours later, they were seated in the break room with crime scene photos spread between them and lukewarm coffee steaming in their cups. Martinez tapped a photo from day 3 of the original search. Volunteers in bright vests combing the hillside west of the lake. Jeremy coordinated this team personally, she said. He insisted Emily talked about the Overlook Trail. Said it was her favorite. Nathan frowned. It wasn't. What was? Anything near water. That's why we built the house there. She said the lake made her feel like she was on the edge of something beautiful. Hiking wasn't her thing unless it ended at a waterfall or shoreline. So why lie? Martinez leaned back in her chair. Let's pretend this is deliberate. What's the goal of misdirecting search teams away from Sunrise Cove? Nathan's mouth went dry. To delay the discovery of something. A clue. Or a body. Martinez studied him. Did Jeremy ever seem fixated on Emily? I didn't notice anything obvious, but we weren't close. Office party banter, that's all. Obsession isn't always loud, Martinez said. Sometimes it's polite, helpful, patient. She stood and began stacking files. I'm going to pull his employee records and his calendar logs from the council, see if anything jumps. You should get some air. I don't want to leave this. You're not leaving it. You're living it again. Go slow, Mr. Hartwell. This isn't a sprint. You've waited 11 years. Don't burn out in 11 hours. Nathan didn't go home. He drove to the water instead. Sunrise Cove was 23 minutes away if you didn't hit the weekend boating traffic. On a Wednesday afternoon, it felt like the world had forgotten it existed. The lake was gray and restless. Cold waves kissed the dock like apologies. The oak tree that had held the ring stood half hidden up the trail, unmarked to the untrained eye, but now a scar in his memory. He walked up to it. No crime scene tape, no markers, just bark, wind, and silence. He touched the trunk. The gouges were real. Newer ones still raw. Someone had returned here, more than once. Why? He whispered. Why here? A sound behind him. A footstep? He turned, heart in his throat. But it was only the wind moving the trees. Still, he didn't like the feeling. Something in the air felt occupied, like the tree wasn't the only thing watching. Back at the precinct the next day, Martinez greeted him with 2 cups of coffee and a file folder. Jeremy's employee records came in. She laid them out on the desk. Scheduled leave, August 2012, 1 month, right after Emily's disappearance. He said it was for family reasons, but there's no family emergency noted. No death, no birth, no anything, just a month away. Nathan's stomach sank. He vanished after she did. Martinez nodded grimly. That's not the only thing. I had tech pull his cell logs. Limited info. It's been a decade, but we found something odd. She slid over a printout. Last known call from his work number was on July 8th, to Emily's cell, 6 minutes, right before she left home. Nathan stared at the page. The timestamp matched the time she'd been in the kitchen, when she'd made that last cup of coffee, when she'd kissed him and smiled. Martinez folded her arms. We can't prove what was said, but it matches a pattern I've seen before. Last-minute contact to confirm a meetup. This wasn't a friendly check-in. This was orchestration. He lured her there, Nathan said, the words tasting like poison. Martinez didn't disagree. The storage unit smelled like dust and grief. Nathan hadn't stepped inside since the year Emily disappeared, when he packed up everything that reminded him too much of her to bear but couldn't bring himself to throw away. The metal door groaned as it rolled up, revealing stacks of boxes labeled in Emily's tidy handwriting. Winter clothes, photo albums, camping gear. It was all there, perfectly preserved, like a life cryogenically frozen, just waiting for someone to decide whether to keep it or let it thaw. He stepped inside and the air closed in behind him, stale and quiet, thick with the weight of memory. He ran his fingers along the boxes, pausing at one marked, hiking. Personal. Inside he found her backpack. Red. North Face. The one she bought for their honeymoon in Banff. The one she insisted was too expensive until he reminded her she was worth more than the price tag. He lifted it out and sat cross-legged on the concrete floor like he was 10 years younger, and this was some strange ritual of archaeology. The weight of the pack felt too real in his hands. He opened the front pocket first. Inside was a manila folder, labeled in Emily's familiar script, Work, Private. Nathan froze. Emily wasn't secretive. Organized, meticulous, yes, but this felt hidden. He opened the folder and found her day planner. Leather-bound, pages stiff with age but still intact. The very one she'd carried everywhere, the same one she always claimed was her external brain. Nathan flipped through it, heart hammering. July 2012. Each page filled with her looping handwriting, to-do lists, work notes, errands. And then, amid the mundane, something that made his breath stop. July 2nd. Jay called again. Says he understands what I need. Maybe he's right. Maybe I've been pretending to be satisfied for too long. Nathan stared at the page like it might catch fire. July 5th. Dinner with Jay. Felt seen for the first time in months. Is this what I've been missing? His hands trembled. Jay. It had to be Jeremy. The entries continued, trailing deeper into something intimate, secret. July 7th. Jay says Nathan wouldn't understand my need for intellectual stimulation. Maybe he's right. Maybe I've been settling for comfortable instead of fulfilling. Nathan felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. He flipped to July 8th, the day she vanished. Going to Sunrise Cove today. Jay wants to talk alone about something important. Nathan's gone to Portland for work. Perfect timing. Maybe this is the answer I've been looking for. He remembered that day now with gut-sick clarity. The way she'd smiled, kissed him goodbye, said she'd paddle to the cove for fresh air. She hadn't been going to clear her head. She'd been going to meet someone. To meet Jeremy. Nathan sat there for a long time, the planner open in his lap, the truth bleeding out of the pages like ink into water. He had to call Martinez. She answered on the second ring. Detective Martinez. It's Nathan, he said, voice tight. I found something. Her planner. She was meeting someone the day she disappeared. Jeremy. She called him Jay. She said he understood her. That he was what she'd been missing. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming to you. Martinez arrived 20 minutes later with her gloves on and a notepad ready. Nathan handed her the planner without a word. She read in silence, eyes narrowing with each entry. This is extensive, she said finally. We didn't know anything about this. There was never mention of another relationship. Because she didn't want me to know. She thought I wouldn't understand. He sounded like a man strangling on his own guilt. And I didn't. I didn't know she was unhappy. Martinez nodded slowly. It's more than an affair. These entries, this is manipulation, isolation. It reads like grooming. She flipped to the last page. He set this meeting up for when you were out of town. Planned it perfectly. Nathan's voice was flat. Even back then, he was choreographing everything. Martinez's gaze sharpened. We're not dealing with some lovesick idiot, Nathan. We're dealing with a long-game predator. You don't groom someone like this on impulse. You do it because you've already decided what the outcome will be. Kidnapping. Or worse. She closed the planner carefully, like sealing a confession back into its tomb. We're going to cross-reference this with phone logs, emails, council records. If Jeremy's name is in her orbit, we'll find it. Nathan's eyes were hollow. I let this happen. No, Martinez said firmly. He made it happen, and we're going to prove it. She took the planner into evidence and locked it in a case with a clack that sounded too final. Nathan stayed behind, surrounded by boxes that once held a future. He stared at the red backpack, the one she'd packed that morning, and knew something she never had a chance to write down. She hadn't just been meeting a man. She'd been walking straight into a trap. Jeremy Blackwood opened the door with a smile so practiced it looked chiseled into his face. Detective Martinez. Nathan, what a surprise. Nathan stood slightly behind her, jaw tight, fists clenched at his sides. Martinez's badge glinted in the sunlight as she returned the smile with one just as sharp. Appreciate you taking the time, Mr. Blackwood. We're revisiting some aspects of the Emily Hartwell case. Mind if we ask a few questions? Of course. Anything I can do to help? Jeremy gestured them inside with that same easy charm that had made him popular at council events. His cabin-style house smelled like pine and sage, the decor outdoorsy without being messy. Leather-bound books, climbing gear hung like art, a French press still warm on the counter. Nathan clocked every item like a detective in his own right. Too clean, too curated, too untouched. Martinez took a seat at the dining table, pulling out her notebook. Back in 2012, you gave a statement to the sheriff's office. You said Emily mentioned going for a hike on the Western Loop, Sunset Point. Yes. Jeremy nodded. That was the last thing she told me. She said she was excited to finally try it. We used to talk about hiking a lot. Trail recommendations, gear reviews. Nathan's voice was cold. Funny. She didn't write anything about that in her planner. Jeremy didn't miss a beat. Well, she was spontaneous sometimes. Maybe she didn't feel the need to write it down. She wrote everything down, Nathan said. You knew that. Jeremy smiled slightly. I didn't read her planner, Nathan. Martinez cut in. Did Emily ever confide in you about any issues in her marriage? Jeremy looked thoughtful. Not directly, but you could tell. She was restless, distracted. I assumed something was off, but she wasn't the type to complain. She internalized a lot. You were close, Martinez said, watching his hands. Co-workers, Jeremy replied smoothly. We respected each other. Were you in contact with her the week she disappeared? A couple emails, maybe a phone call. I'd have to check. Martinez raised an eyebrow. We already did. Her phone records show a 12-minute call with you the day before she vanished. Right. That sounds right. She called about a grant proposal. At 10:42 p.m.? Jeremy's face twitched. She was a night owl. Sometimes she got ideas late. And in that call, did she mention wanting to meet you at Sunrise Cove? Sunrise? Jeremy looked genuinely confused, or did a good job pretending. No, she said she was hiking west. Nathan stepped forward. Her planner says otherwise. She wrote she was going to meet someone at the cove, someone named Jay. Jeremy blinked. For the first time, a real crack in the armor. I don't know what that means. Sure you do, Nathan said, voice low. She trusted you, confided in you. You were her confidant, weren't you? Jeremy stood slowly. I think I'd like to speak to my attorney before continuing this conversation. Martinez nodded, closing her notebook without missing a beat. That's your right. We appreciate your time. As they stepped outside, Nathan exhaled shakily. You saw it too. The flicker. He knows. He knows. Martinez's voice was calm, but inside her head, gears were turning at full speed. The first real reaction. The first unguarded moment. We've got him on record giving a statement 11 years ago that contradicts Emily's own documentation. That alone reopens the field. But now, we have motive, inconsistency, and premeditation. What next? Nathan asked, heart pounding. We background him. Everything. Financials, job records, psych evaluations, if he ever had one. We find that missing link, and then we press. She glanced back toward the house. Jeremy stood at the window, not bothering to hide the fact that he was watching them. His face was calm again, mask restored. But Martinez had seen what she needed. For the first time since this case reopened, Jeremy Blackwood had blinked. And that was all she needed. Just one blink, just one crack. The rest was just pressure. Sunrise Cove looked different after 11 years. More overgrown, the shoreline subtly changed, but the bones of it were the same. The same looping trails that vanished into the trees. The same lake glinting like a blade under the late morning sun. The same quiet, watchful stillness that had made Emily love it and Nathan grow uneasy every time she came here alone. Today, the place was no longer just a memory. It was an active crime scene. Martinez stood beside Nathan near the base of the tree where the ring had been found, her boots crunching on leaves. The forensics team moved methodically around them, careful, deliberate, treating every branch like potential testimony. Flags marked ground-penetrating radar hits. A drone buzzed overhead, mapping terrain that had likely never been photographed in this detail. We've logged 4 anomalies within a 40-meter radius, said Officer Keene, pointing toward the tablet screen. Could be nothing. Could be caches. Could be burials. Martinez nodded. We're digging. She turned to Nathan. You should stay back from the site itself. I'm not going anywhere, he said. His voice was low but steady. Not this time. She didn't argue. Not today. Not after what they'd found in the planner. Not after Jeremy's face when they'd said her name. Martinez walked the perimeter herself, noting the tree formations, the slope of the bluff above them, the animal trails that intersected nearby. Emily had come here with someone who'd known this grove wasn't visible from the trail, who'd chosen a place with both access and seclusion. This wasn't where she'd accidentally drowned or gotten lost. This was where something had happened that someone needed to keep hidden. An officer waved her over. Detective, we've got something. She knelt beside the shallow excavation. At first glance, it looked like just another twisted root, but the shape was wrong. Too straight, too angular. She reached in with a gloved hand and brushed away more soil, a piece of canvas. Red, faded and decayed, but unmistakable. Martinez looked up at Nathan. We found her kayak. The words punched the air from his lungs. It wasn't on the water? No. Martinez stood. It was hidden. Buried. Then someone lied. Nathan's hands curled into fists. They said it was found adrift. They told me it washed up, that she'd likely drowned. Someone staged that and planted the ring, which means we're looking at someone who didn't just act in the heat of the moment. This was planned, prepped, and covered. Nathan's eyes scanned the trees. Jeremy. He volunteered for the search that day. Said he found the kayak. Martinez's head whipped toward him. You're sure? Positive. He said he spotted it drifting near the rocks. That's when they called off the water dive. She cursed under her breath. So he found the kayak that he'd already buried, then pretended it was just discovered, lied to police, which puts him square in the center of everything. She looked to her team. Pull up the original incident report. I want his statement, word for word. They worked through the afternoon, more digging, More cataloging. By 4 p.m., another anomaly gave up its secret, a duffel bag, half-rotted. Inside it, a sweatshirt that had once been yellow and a waterproof journal pouch with the corner of a notebook inside. Martinez bagged it herself, hoping there was enough ink left to read. Nathan stood near the tree and didn't move. "Why bury the kayak?" he asked finally. "Why not leave it in the lake like everyone thought?" "Because it ties him to the cove. It ties him to that morning. And he knew she'd told someone she was kayaking here, so he needed a story that matched what others expected. He played the narrative like a script." "Exactly." Martinez turned back to the forensic team. "Expand the dig zone. We're not done here." That night, Nathan and Martinez sat in her office, the evidence laid out before them like ghosts. Emily's ring, the planner, the duffel, the recovered scraps of canvas from the buried kayak. "He's not going to run," Martinez said. "He thinks he's still smarter than us." Nathan didn't answer. He just stared at the ring, the thing that started all of it again. 11 years of silence, broken by a slip, a mistake, or maybe a message. "What if he wanted us to find it?" Nathan said suddenly. "What if this is part of it?" Martinez looked at him. "Explain." "Jeremy was obsessed with her. We both see that now. What if he planted the ring because he wanted someone to come looking again? Maybe she remembered something. Maybe she started asking questions. And he got scared." Martinez leaned forward. "Or maybe she's still alive." The room went silent. "You said there were fresh marks on the tree," Nathan said. "Scratches made this year. He's been visiting the site. Like a ritual, or like someone leaving messages for someone else." Martinez's eyes narrowed. "If she's alive, we have to find her before he moves her, before he silences her permanently." "Then we make him feel like we're not close," Nathan said, "like we're confused, following the wrong thread. We bait him, and we catch him in the act." Martinez looked at the evidence spread out like a battle map. "One more mistake, Jeremy. That's all we need." "He'll make it," Nathan said. "He already has." Jeremy Blackwood stood beneath the same tree he'd visited every year since Emily disappeared, his hands pressed flat against the bark like he could will time to stop. The ritual comforted him, rooted him. The marks he etched with the tip of his knife were shallow, meaningless to anyone else, but to him they were sacred, a record of loyalty, of sacrifice, of promises kept. He didn't hear the camera shutter from 200 yards away, didn't notice the quiet click of the zoom lens locking focus. Detective Martinez sat camouflaged behind a fallen log, watching through her scope as Jeremy's knife carved a small X into the outer ring of bark, a fresh mark joining the older ones. Behind her, Officer Keene whispered into his mic, "Subjects marking the tree. Confirmed." Martinez nodded once and kept watching. Jeremy stepped back, examined his work, then knelt by the base of the tree and retrieved something small from the pocket of his coat. A folded note. He tucked it into a crack in the bark, pressed the wood around it, then turned and walked back toward the bluff trail like a man who had just finished saying a prayer. Martinez waited until he was out of sight before exhaling. "Got it all?" she asked. "Every second," Keene confirmed. They'd been watching him for 3 days. He hadn't noticed the unmarked vehicle half a mile from the trailhead. Hadn't realized the jogger who passed him on Tuesday was a deputy with a body cam. Hadn't questioned why the cashier at the gas station asked if he was still volunteering on the case. Martinez's setup question planted an hour earlier. They were laying breadcrumbs in reverse, and Jeremy, meticulous as he was, couldn't resist following a script he'd written for himself. Nathan sat at the sheriff's office, poring over every photograph from the site. He hadn't slept much since the kayak was found. Emily's handwriting in the recovered notebook was faint but legible. Half of the pages had rotted away, but what remained was enough to make Nathan feel like his heart was a fractured metronome. July 3rd. Jay says he found a place that no one knows about. A real sanctuary. Says it'll be just for us. I told him I needed time. July 6th. I said no. Jay didn't take it well. Says I'm still brainwashed by guilt and expectations. July 8th. Going to meet him at the Cove. Want to make it clear once and for all that it's over. But part of me is scared. I told Nathan I'd go kayaking. If I'm not back by dinner, he'll worry. The entry ended there. The rest of the page was waterlogged into oblivion. Martinez came in carrying a photo. The note he left in the tree. You'll want to see it. Nathan took it and read aloud. You were right to doubt them. They never saw you. I still do. I always will. Come back to me. His hands trembled. He thinks she's alive. He knows she is, Martinez corrected. You don't write notes to the dead every month for 11 years. You're tracking someone still breathing. So, he's hiding her, somewhere. And he's getting nervous. That note is desperation. He's afraid she'll remember. She's already starting to. Martinez pulled out a second photo, an image from a trail camera placed outside the cove. A woman, thin, long, gray-streaked hair pulled into a braid, walking cautiously, alone. Taken 4 nights ago, Martinez said. She moves like someone who hasn't been free in a long time. We enhance the image. It's her, Nathan. Nathan stared at the photograph like it might vanish. Then we find her. Not yet. If we spook Jeremy, he could disappear, or worse. What's the plan? Martinez leaned over the table. We let him think he's still in control. We send a message through his own channel. The tree? Exactly. You write something she'll recognize, something only she would know. We leave it where he'll find it. Let him take it back to her. Let her know we're close. Nathan pulled out a pen and a piece of paper. He paused, then wrote 4 words. The bacon is yours. Martinez blinked. That's what you want to say? It was our joke. I always guarded my bacon at breakfast. She used to steal pieces when I wasn't looking. When I said, that's mine, she'd grin and say, the bacon is mine now. I told her once, only once, the bacon is yours. She cried. No one else would get it. Perfect, Martinez said. It's intimate, irrefutable. Let's go. They drove to the grove just after dark. Keene stood watch as Nathan placed the folded note beneath the same bark fisher Jeremy had used. Now we wait, Martinez said. 2 days later, trail cam footage captured Jeremy back at the tree. He read the note, face still as stone. Then he crushed the paper in his hand and ran. We follow, Martinez said, and this time they were right behind him. The dirt road to the cabin was so narrow and overgrown it barely qualified as a trail. Martinez drove without headlights, the cruiser crawling behind the unmarked SUV carrying Nathan and Officer Keene. Jeremy's Subaru had left clear tire impressions in the mud from the previous night's rainfall, confirmation that he had returned. They parked a quarter mile from the property and proceeded on foot, boots muffled by moss and pine needles, radios silent. Sunrise was still an hour away. The air was thick with the kind of tension that makes even insects go quiet. Nathan's heart hammered so hard it made his ribs ache. Every crunch of brush underfoot sounded deafening. Martinez motioned for them to stop. Through a break in the trees, the cabin appeared, squat and gray and still. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney. Jeremy was inside. Martinez whispered, "Perimeter sweep first. No rush." They split, Martinez circling wide, Keene veering left, Nathan cutting close to the tree line near the garden. There it was. The garden Emily had always dreamed of, now planted in neat rows. Kale, snap peas, heirloom tomatoes, even her beloved lavender. And hanging on a post, her floppy sun hat. Nathan felt his knees go weak. He pressed a hand to the cold wood of the fence to steady himself. This was real. Not theory, not ghost, not grief playing tricks. Emily had lived here, was maybe still here. A faint sound drifted through the early morning hush, the quiet clatter of dishware. Martinez reappeared beside Nathan. "He's awake. We go now." The front door wasn't locked. Jeremy never expected a breach. Martinez stepped in first, weapon raised, voice calm but commanding. "Sheriff's Department. Jeremy Blackwood, don't move." Jeremy froze at the sink, holding a mug, bare feet on worn wooden floorboards. He didn't speak, didn't flinch, just turned slowly, eyes blank with resignation. Nathan pushed past Keene into the cabin, breath catching. The interior was pristine but lived in. Quilts folded with care, books lined up by subject, a chessboard mid-game. On the table, Emily's Save the Whales mug, half full of tea. "Where is she?" Nathan asked, voice barely a whisper. Jeremy stared at him like a man waking from a dream. "You shouldn't be here." "Where is she?" Martinez repeated, sharper. Jeremy blinked slowly. "She's resting. She doesn't do well with noise this early." "Take us to her, now." Jeremy turned and walked toward a small hallway. Martinez followed, gun steady. At the end of the hall, a door stood half open. Jeremy paused with his hand on the knob. "She won't understand. You're going to scare her." "Let us worry about that." Jeremy opened the door. The room was soft and quiet, filled with morning light. A small desk in the corner, books stacked on the windowsill, a bed with a handmade quilt. And on the bed, sitting upright in a pale blue sweater, was Emily. Her hair was longer, threaded with gray, her face thinner, but her eyes, those were the same. She looked up, blinking against the brightness, confusion tightening her brow. "Jeremy?" "It's okay," he said quickly. "Just stay calm." "Emily." Nathan stepped into the room, trembling. "It's me. It's Nathan." She stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. "I remember you," she said softly. "You used to sing in the car, off-key, always 2 beats behind." Nathan laughed, tears spilling before he could stop them. "That's right. You'd threaten to jump out at red lights. You brought me ginger tea when I had the flu," she said slowly. "You bought that stupid lava lamp because you thought it looked like space. And you hated it. I didn't hate it. I loved that you loved it." She stood up on unsteady legs, swaying slightly. Nathan rushed forward but didn't touch her. He waited. Emily stepped close and pressed her forehead gently to his. "I dreamed you would come." Behind them, Martinez snapped handcuffs onto Jeremy's wrists. "Jeremy Blackwood, you're under arrest for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and obstruction of justice." Jeremy didn't resist, didn't speak, just watched Emily with an expression that veered between awe and devastation. "You were happy here," he said, voice cracking. "You were safe." "I wasn't free," Emily said quietly. "You made a world where I didn't have to be afraid, but only because you controlled every piece of it." She turned to Nathan. "I don't know how to go back to who I was." "You don't have to," he said. "We start from here." Martinez handed Emily a blanket as EMTs arrived. She sat in the back of the ambulance, holding Nathan's hand while they checked her vitals. Jeremy was led to a cruiser in cuffs, eyes forward. But when Emily turned her head to look at him one last time, he stopped walking. "I loved you," he said. "I still do." "You loved an idea," Emily replied. "Not me." As the ambulance pulled away, the wind picked up through the trees, scattering the last of the autumn leaves around the cabin. Emily closed her eyes and breathed in the cold air like it was the first clean breath she'd taken in years. The hospital room was quiet, but not sterile. A vase of wildflowers sat near the window, a small gesture from one of the nurses who'd recognized Emily's name but said nothing. The TV was off, the blinds open, and the only sound was the occasional whisper of paper as Emily flipped through her own medical records. She had insisted on reading them herself. Every scan, every evaluation, every psych report. Across from her, Nathan sat stiffly in the guest chair, unsure if he should speak or wait. Dr. Kim entered without a clipboard, hands folded loosely, her voice low and measured. "Emily, how are you feeling today?" "Curious," Emily said, not looking up. "Exhausted, angry, like my whole life has been run through a meat grinder and spit back out in pieces." "All valid," Dr. Kim said. "Have you slept?" "A little. Enough." She finally closed the folder. "You wrote that I was exhibiting signs of long-term conditioned compliance. Can you unpack that?" "It means that when someone is isolated, manipulated, and emotionally controlled over a long period of time, they learn to adapt in order to survive. They suppress their own instincts and slowly replace them with the caretaker's expectations." "He wasn't my caretaker," Emily said sharply. "He was my captor." Dr. Kim nodded. "You're right, but the language we use often lags behind the reality of coercive control. He created a structure that seemed nurturing on the surface but removed your freedom, your choices, even your sense of self." Emily glanced at Nathan. "He made me think I was broken. Like you were part of what broke me. Like the life I had before wasn't mine to return to." "That's how trauma bonding works," Dr. Kim said. "He positioned himself as your rescuer and then created a world in which you had to rely on him to feel safe." "But it felt peaceful," Emily admitted, shame creeping into her voice. "After a while, I stopped questioning it. I even started looking forward to the garden, the routine. It didn't feel like a prison until I remembered what freedom felt like." "You adapted to survive," Dr. Kim said gently. "Your brain did what it had to do." Nathan leaned forward. "When did you start remembering?" Emily met his gaze. "Not all at once. At first it was dreams, disjointed things, a smell, a song. The way you used to tap the steering wheel offbeat. I'd wake up crying and not know why. Then one day I asked Jeremy about it, and he said it was just fantasy, that it wasn't real, but it felt real. He gaslighted you," Dr. Kim said. "Told you your truth was imaginary." "Exactly." Emily folded her arms. "So I stopped asking. I started keeping things to myself. Little scraps, a song lyric, a grocery list, your name." Nathan's throat tightened. "Emily, She held up a hand. "Don't. Not yet. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at everything. At myself. At how easy it was for someone to erase me." "You weren't erased," Nathan said, voice thick. "You were hidden, and now you're here." Emily looked out the window. "That's what scares me. I don't know who I am now. I'm not the Emily you married. I'm not the Emily he wanted me to be. I don't know what's left." "Then let's find out together." "Slowly," she warned. "On my terms." "Of course." Dr. Kim stood. "I'll give you two some space. Emily will begin individual therapy tomorrow. No pressure, just groundwork." "Thank you," Emily said quietly. After she left, Nathan stood and approached the bed. "I brought you something." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded note. Emily took it cautiously. It was one of her old planner pages, the corner slightly torn. On it, Nathan had written, "Things I missed that I want to learn again. 1. Your favorite kind of cloud. 2. What books you hate. 3. The way you take your coffee now." She stared at it for a long moment. "You kept my planner." "It was all I had of you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You think we can start over?" "I don't want to start over. I want to start new. No pretending we're who we used to be." She nodded slowly, fingers tightening around the note. "Then we begin with clouds. Cirrus, always cirrus. They look like brushstrokes on the sky, like the wind left fingerprints." Nathan smiled, his own eyes wet. "Brushstrokes. Got it." Emily leaned back against the pillows, the note resting on her chest like armor. The past was fractured, but the future, tentative, trembling, was beginning to take shape. Not a return, a reconstruction. Jeremy Blackwood entered the courtroom in a navy suit 2 sizes too big. He looked thinner, paler than the man who had knelt by a tree carving symbols into bark. But his eyes still carried the same unsettling calm, like he believed he still knew something the rest of the world did not. Emily sat in the second row, flanked by Detective Martinez on one side and her trauma counselor on the other. She didn't speak, didn't blink, but her back was straight, her chin high. Nathan sat 2 rows behind, hands folded tightly in his lap, not because he needed to hold them still, but because if he didn't, he feared he might leap from his seat and rip Jeremy apart. State versus Jeremy Blackwood, on charges of kidnapping, unlawful confinement, psychological coercion, identity fraud, obstruction of justice, and aggravated assault, the judge read. Defense, how do you plead? Jeremy stood slowly, voice clear and steady. Not guilty, Your Honor. A wave of murmurs rolled through the courtroom like a low wind, but Emily didn't react. She'd expected nothing less. We will prove, the prosecutor began, that Mr. Blackwood orchestrated a calculated long-term deception that culminated in the abduction of a woman who trusted him, the concealment of her identity for over a decade, and the sustained psychological manipulation that stripped her of agency. The defense attorney, a gray-haired man with a perpetually pinched expression, rose next. We intend to show that Ms. Hartwell's decision to remain with Mr. Blackwood was not abduction, but a product of free will, that she was not held against her will, but instead participated in a consensual decision to remove herself from a life in which she felt unseen. Emily's hands curled into fists. Martinez touched her knee gently. Let them talk. Let them hang themselves with their own words. The prosecution began with evidence, photographs of the cabin, recordings of Jeremy speaking to Emily as if she were a child, letters he wrote in her name to prevent questions. Then came the journals. One by one, the pages were read aloud. Jeremy's entries cataloging Emily's moods, routines, relapses, and emotional correction progress. Each page was worse than the last. July 2016, the prosecutor read. Emily expressed nostalgia for her previous life. I reminded her that idealizing the past is a trauma response. She was quiet for the remainder of the evening, withheld dinner as correction. By morning, she was compliant again. The jury shifted uncomfortably. One woman bit her lip until it turned white. Did she ever attempt to leave? The prosecutor asked Dr. Kim, called as an expert witness. Not after the first year, Dr. Kim replied. Because she'd been conditioned to believe she had no choice. Every perceived escape was met with subtle correction, loss of privileges, emotional withdrawal, reframing of reality, classic trauma bonding. Jeremy took notes as she spoke, occasionally nodding like a student during a lecture. When Emily was called to testify, the room held its breath. She walked to the stand in jeans and a dark green blouse, no makeup, hair in a braid. Her voice, when it came, was steady. He told me my husband didn't love me, that my memories were lies, that I had chosen him. And for a long time, I believed it, because I needed to, because the alternative meant facing the horror of what had really happened. What do you remember about the day you disappeared? I told Jeremy I was staying with my husband, that I didn't want to leave. I drank the coffee he brought me. I started to feel dizzy. I woke up in the cabin. The door was locked. There were bars on the bedroom window. The defense attorney stood. Did he ever physically harm you? No, not in ways that left bruises. Did he provide you with food, shelter, education? Yes. Did you ever tell him you wanted to leave? Not after the first time. Why not? Because I knew what the answer would be. Because I had learned that the only way to survive was to play the part he'd assigned me. So you're saying you were pretending for 11 years? No, I'm saying I was broken. The silence after that answer lasted far too long. Nathan could barely breathe. Jeremy's gaze flicked to him, then back to Emily. For the first time, there was doubt in his expression. He hadn't expected this, hadn't prepared for the version of Emily that didn't flinch, that didn't cry, that stared him down and told the truth.
He carved a reality, she said, and then he buried me in it. The judge recessed for the day. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. Emily ignored them. She and Nathan walked side by side, not holding hands, but aligned in every step. You did it, Nathan said softly. You told the world. It's not for them, Emily said. It's for me. I needed to hear myself say it out loud. And in her voice, there was a strength that had taken 11 years to reclaim. The courtroom was silent as the bailiff entered with the sealed envelope. Every breath felt held, every body stiff with anticipation, and somewhere behind Emily's ribs was a pressure that hadn't left her since the first day she testified. Nathan sat 2 rows back. His fingers dug into the wood of the bench, his heartbeat thudding so loud he was afraid others might hear it. Detective Martinez stood near the back wall, her eyes fixed on the judge, but her focus entirely on Emily. Jeremy Blackwood sat at the defense table, composed as ever, dressed in another ill-fitting suit, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He looked like a man awaiting a performance review, not the verdict on whether the past 11 years of a woman's life had been a nightmare or not. The judge adjusted his glasses, opened the envelope, and cleared his throat. Will the defendant please rise? Jeremy stood, not a flicker of emotion on his face. Emily closed her eyes. On the charges of kidnapping, unlawful confinement, psychological coercion, and aggravated obstruction of justice, we, the jury, find the defendant, Jeremy Allen Blackwood, guilty on all counts. A gasp somewhere in the room, but Emily didn't open her eyes. Not yet. Not until she heard the words again. Sentencing will take place in 4 weeks. Bail is denied. Mr. Blackwood will be remanded to custody immediately. The gavel struck once, sharp and final. Then Emily opened her eyes, and for the first time since July 8th, 2012, the weight that had pressed against her chest like stone began to lift. Jeremy turned to look at her as the bailiff took his elbow. There was no rage, no pleading, no confusion. Just a faint smile, like he still believed none of it mattered, like he had still won. Emily met his gaze, steady and unmoved, and then, finally, she turned her back on him. The crowd broke into motion. Reporters, family, courtroom staff. Nathan stayed where he was, watching Emily with a kind of reverence he hadn't been able to voice since the day he found her again. She stepped down from the witness box like a woman returning from war, scarred but upright, changed but not destroyed. Outside the courthouse, the sky had turned a brilliant shade of late afternoon gold. Emily stood on the steps, her face upturned to the light. It felt warmer than she remembered, as if the sun itself had waited for her. Nathan joined her, careful not to intrude, but she turned to him with a small smile. "You waited. I never stopped. I don't know who I am yet," she said, "but I know who I'm not. I'm not his, not anymore." "You never were," Nathan said, his voice hoarse. "He just made you forget." Emily looked out at the gathered press, then down at the small silver ring on her thumb, one she'd chosen herself, bought herself, worn not because someone gave it to her, but because she liked the way it felt. "I want to go home," she said. "But not the old home. Not yet." "Where then?" Nathan asked. "Somewhere new, just for a while. A small place with a porch. I want to grow something again. Not because it's expected, because it's mine." Nathan nodded. "I'll help you find it. And when I'm ready, if I ever am, we'll talk. Whenever you want. Maybe next summer. I'll take up kayaking again," she said. "Not on the lake. Somewhere unfamiliar. I think I need to stop haunting old water." They didn't say goodbye. They didn't have to. What lay between them wasn't over, but it wasn't broken either. It was waiting and healing, and maybe, eventually, it would be love again, but this time, with eyes wide open. Jeremy Blackwood's sentencing came swiftly, 42 years with no chance of parole for 25. His psychological profile would be studied for years. Textbook narcissistic delusion, enhanced by intellectual vanity, masked as emotional sensitivity, a predator in professor's clothing. But Emily didn't attend the sentencing. She was in a different county that day, signing a lease on a small cedar-shingled cottage with a greenhouse out back and an overgrown garden that would take months to tame. She sent Nathan a photo of the empty rooms and a caption, "Day 1. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a message, "No pressure, just cheering you on." A month later, she sent another photo, a bookshelf, 2/3 full, a kettle, a bright blue mug. Her caption read, "Learning what I like again." Nathan framed it. 6 months later, they met for coffee in a neutral town halfway between them. It was quiet, comfortable. Emily talked about therapy, about joining a writing group, about starting to speak to survivors who'd lived under psychological control. Nathan listened. Sometimes he made her laugh. When they parted, she hugged him. Brief, strong, warm. "I remember everything now," she said. "Not just what happened, but who I was, and who I want to be." "Who's that?" he asked. "Someone who survived, and someone who gets to decide what that means." Back at Sunrise Cove, the tree still stood, bark thick where the hollow had once been. The place where the ring had been buried was now overgrown, and no one looking would ever know what it had once held. Emily hadn't been back. Maybe someday she would, or maybe not. She had no obligation to return to the site of her disappearance. She was too busy reappearing. Her name, once filed in a missing persons report, was now written in her own hand again, on bills, on rental agreements, on a driver's license renewed. She had been missing. Now she was not just found, but free.